Value podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition their business on their terms. Our mission was born from the lessons we've learned from over 100 business transactions, which fuels our desire to share our experiences and wisdom so you can succeed. Now here's your host, CEO of Mastery Partners, Tom Bronson.
Hi, this is Tom Bronson, and welcome to Maximize Business Value, a podcast for business owners who are passionate about building long-term sustainable value in their businesses. In this episode, this is the third part of a series on sales and growth strategies, and we're going to have more beyond this. We've already had two the last couple of weeks. We have more coming up. But in this episode, we're going to continue this mini-series on growth strategies, and I'd like to welcome our guest, Debbie Mrazek. She's the president of The Sales Company. Debbie and I are both members of Business Pros, which is a Dallas-based organization of professionals dedicated to educational opportunities for business owners, just like this. Debbie recently presented at an educational program for Business Pros, and I knew instantly that I wanted to have her on this podcast. Not only does Debbie absolutely love empowering people to sell and achieve more, she's also a faculty member for the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses Initiative, a great program for sure. You should look into that. And she was named one of the 2020 and 2021 most powerful business leaders in Dallas by DCEO magazine. I'm so excited to have her on board today. Welcome to Maximize Business Value, Debbie.
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for inviting me today to talk about my favorite subject. I look forward to it.
Awesome. Well, our folks need to plug into this because they're going to get lots of wisdom. So tell us about The Sales Company.
You bet. So we started our career actually selling semiconductors for Texas Instruments. So working with a lot of technology, technical people and all. And one of the things that I learned in doing that was a lot of people, brilliant ideas, but they could not sell. So they would lose their businesses. You know, they'd have some genius invention or whatever, but they would lose it. So I started doing, I had done sales for my whole career, inside, outside sales, even customer service when I began. And so I started doing consulting only for technology companies. And fast forward 20 plus years today, we do all industries now. And it has just been just so invigorating and fun, and every day is different. And so that is what we do, is we help other people be able to sell in a way that they can sell.
Yeah, it's you said a mouthful. So many entrepreneurs are out there, experts at building the widget, right? They know they're technologists. They know how to build better products faster and that kind of thing. And so, but a lot of times the sales strategy, the sales element escapes them. There's a lot of that in the consulting industry as well. Folks that are really good at their craft who are not great at selling their products and motivating others. So you've told us a little bit about your background selling semiconductors, but why did you start the sales company? What was the impetus for that 20 years ago?
Was because in seeing these people that, you know, were so passionate about what they did, you know, they had used their money, their grandmother's money, 20, 30 years ago, you know, people, there was VC money, but not like we see it today. And so to see them it was their dream. It's what they wanted to do. And because of this one thing that I thought was like everybody could do, you know, it was, you know, like I can do this. And so I was at the time, right before I got into consulting, I had a manufacturer's rep company, and we represented companies all over the world. And that market, I was selling, like I said, printed circuit boards, semiconductors, was getting so competitive that we were spending months every year negotiating those darn contracts and getting less and less money. And it's like, you know, you just get to a point sometimes it's like, I think it's time to do something different. And I just really believe that I could do this. And because I care about other people, and I loved the technology business. And so that's what made me take the leap. And I've been so grateful that I did.
Now, you don't only work in technology, though,
Oh,
right?
no. Today I work in everything. In fact, I tell the story on a good friend of mine who is the kind of friend that you call when you've done something really great. I mean, like really great. And they go, yes, this is great. We'll have champagne, kind of thing. So that kind of friend. But that kind of friend called me one day and said, and I mean, like serious as a heart attack, like, you know what? You help all these other people. I don't know why you don't help me. And she was just serious. And I was like getting teary, like, okay, well, I will never say anything about that again. And she's like, no, you just need to help me. And I thought, what are you talking about? Because I don't do your industry. And she's like, that is nonsense. Sales is sales is sales. And you need to get over here and help me. And I said, well, okay, I'll come do it as a beta. Could we survey your people when we finish, to see if, they appreciate it or it helped them or whatever. And like they say, the rest is history.
Wow. That's a good friend.
I was good. That's what I was going to tell you. And that is the best kind of friend. And in fact, one of the people that was on her team, I still work with from time to time today.
No kidding.
Oh, he's awesome. Brilliant. And he was just young and just didn't know.
Wow. In my last company, I took on a group of investors that gave me a chief operating officer who said, we just have to build great products because they'll sell themselves. They'll go out there and sell themselves. And it always frustrated me to be in a conversation with him because sales is a craft. Like any other craft, you work to hone the skills that you have as a sales professional. It's a process. It's about all of these things that you have to do, but it is really, in my opinion, it's a learned skill. You always hear those folks who say, "Oh, natural born salesperson." I just don't buy that, right? I mean, people have the gift of gab. Perhaps, but sales is not about talking. It's about listening and understanding and helping others. So where do you land on that equation? Is sales a natural occurrence, or is sales something that you learn?
No, I say that it's both an art and a science. There really is a science to it. There is a process to it, but the art to it is you. And that's why when I said earlier, working with other people to help them be great at sales the way they can do it and perfect their art so they can do sales. People call me sometimes and say, okay, Deb, I've got this great person and, I want everyone to be like George. I will never take that engagement. And I tell them flat out, you don't want everybody to be like George. All your clients are not like George's clients. You need to have, if you're having a team, if you've gone to that level, you need to have different people that can sell to different kinds of people. And I do believe it is an art.
I couldn't agree with you more completely. And salespeople are no different from all other people. They all have to be managed differently. They all have to be, they're all motivated differently. Certainly you want salespeople that have some degree of money motivation if there's a sales compensation factor in there, but something that would work great for me probably wouldn't work for you, and vice versa. But that goes out throughout the organization. I hadn't really thought about that because that's a frequent request. I want everybody to sell like George does.
Yeah.
Well, but George's clients aren't all of the clients that are out there, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing you said is about people being money motivated. One of the things that I think people miss when they're hiring is to ask you, what are your goals? I'm not talking about leading you on. I'm just ask you what your goals are. And if your goal is, say, you want to make $70,000 a year, you want to be able to take the kiddos to Disney World for spring break and a ski break in the fall, well, that's fine. You're probably going to be happy then if you make that 70. But if I'm looking for a salesperson that's going to do 200,000 a year, you may be great, but you're not going to get me where I want to go. The same though, it's like not everybody being George. Maybe you don't need all your salespeople to make $200,000 a year because there's different levels of profit and stuff. So if you have you say a George superstar that's $200,000 a year, great profit, and then there is a steadiness to your business though if you keep going at this level. So maybe you need $270,000, you need a 150, you need a 200.
I love that. I love that. Everybody's not going to be the same, and you're not going to get the same result out of everybody.
Well, and this is why you see a lot of times when people take sales positions, like they give them a 6 month, window, like they pay them a certain amount of commission for 6 months, and then they leave. Because they didn't ask these things up front. In fact, I have even done things for clients where I have said, old days, you have a stack of resumes, and I could flip through those resumes and go, no. Look at these 3. And they'd say, why? I said, because, they used up their money for the 6 months, and look, they were gone at 9 months. They were gone at 8 months. These aren't people you want to do that. Now, these 3, something else is going on why they want to make a change. And so I would consider them. And seldom have I been wrong in that.
Right. Well, it begs a different issue. And that is a lot of times I hear, gosh, it takes 6 months or it takes a year for a sales rep to be firing on all cylinders at our company. I think that that's a bigger problem. I've never had a business that I couldn't have a new sales rep fully functional, an operational Death Star, if you will, in less than 3 months. But it all boils down to process and how are we doing this, right? How are we teaching it? How are we following through on it? What tools are we giving them? If it takes 6 months or 9 months or a year for somebody to become productive in sales, I think it's a sales process issue and not necessarily a salesperson issue. What do you think about that?
I definitely agree with that. And that's where so many people, they don't appreciate what sales is. They don't even consciously understand that it's a process. It's like what you said earlier, they're just born with it. Well, they may be confident. They may be at ease having a conversation with all kinds of people, but there's a process to sales. There's things you have to do in sales. I do not object to companies offering a draw, like for 6 months, maybe the first month the person needs one in the 4th month or something. I have no objection to it, but the people that know they're coming in and getting their salary and they're going to get this draw for 6 months and then go somewhere else. I think if people really understood what their process was, and also, not everybody's process is a sale in 6 months. There are those things that do take a year or longer. But again, it gets back to interviewing. When you're interviewing somebody, who do they already have relationships with? What kind of sales have they done your particular industry, product, or so? I don't think they have to, but if they have and they have something they can bring to the party right away, then they probably are going to be closer to making that number before, the 6 months or the year or whatever the sales cycle is. But many people have no idea what their sales cycle is.
Yeah, imagine, if you will, hiring somebody, having bad processes, and you've got an 18-month sales cycle. And that's not unusual, right? I mean,
Right.
There are lots of companies out there that have these really, really long sales cycles. And working with that sales rep for 18 months to 2 years, only to have them walk out the door because we didn't interview and hire them properly. We didn't have processes in place. Now you've wasted 2 whole years of your life trying to get this person up to speed when you could have had the right person in the beginning.
And, and they talk about, well, I don't want to use a recruiter. And you and I both know there are brilliant recruiters out there
Yes.
now. And, they don't want to use a recruiter up front because it costs too much money. Yet if they had invested in somebody who really knew how to interview, really understood what you did, and got you the right person firsthand, that 18 months, that person would have made you money, not cost you money. But now what you've done, you've hired inappropriately. And so you do whatever for 18 months. Everybody goes away mad, and you've lost money, not only in sales, but what it cost you, to employ that person, taxes, benefits, whatever.
Yeah, and you've got to replace them again and start the clock all over.
And unfortunately, they do the same thing again.
That's it. And what's the opportunity cost, right?
Yes.
What have we lost in the meantime? So why do people struggle so much with sales, Debbie?
I think, and some people struggle not because, they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes, like I can do it kind of thing, but they really don't understand the process of it. They think it is just about talking to people. I'm just going to talk to you and tell you what I have. And because it is the best mousetrap, you will automatically want it. And so the other thing is in our society, and I think probably in other places in the world too, there's this stereotype about sales being schmucks, or, people that are out to get you and stuff. And so people who aren't that, who want to do sales, but they're always worried about, am I a schmuck? Are they thinking I am? Instead of one of the most difficult but most powerful lessons I ever learned, I was in Houston selling. This was my first gig in outside sales, selling into, if you can imagine, the seismic industry, who never had women salespeople. So this is Dresser Industries, the big guy and Schlumberger kind of people and all. And I was going along, and there was a woman who, I wouldn't say like a mentor, but you know how there are people that just advocate for you. They, you may not be able to do this yet, but they think you can, and they're cheering you on. And one day she said to me, she said, Deb, the sooner you figure out if you would just be you, this is going to work a whole lot better than you trying to be those guys. And I sort of understood and think, because, it's like, just like you and I have talked about our families, our cat, those kind of things and all. Well, what I was doing, I thought the guys only talked about work, like the part numbers, what the engineering department said. And so that's all I did. They would have never known I had a beautiful son and a husband, 2 beagles, a cat, I didn't do that. And she said, Debbie, you are not being you. Let me tell you something. The year that I finally got that, and I talked to my boss about what she said, and he went, she's absolutely right. And so just little by little, I started, and the floodgates opened, and it was fine. And this is why, again, I'm so passionate today about teaching people to sell the way that they can sell, for other people.
I am very fortunate in my career to one of my first sales management jobs. I realized that very quickly, is that people sell differently. They're going to sell to their strengths, but you have to let them be themselves, right? I hired a guy way early in my career. We're talking about probably in the early mid 80s, who he was an older gentleman, basically nearing retirement, and had a very successful sales career, and then was kind of in a slump for a very long time. And we hired him into a territory, and I started working with him. And when he started appreciating the direction that I was giving, and I started letting him be who he was, he was one of our top sales reps, who was basically at the end of his career, that most people would look at him and say, oh, he'll never sell anything. But it was letting him be authentic about who he was. I'll just relay a short story. And this was, we learned from one another, right? In
Yeah.
our whole process. And we were out in a hospital somewhere in deep eastern North Carolina, out in the middle of nowhere in the Sandhills. And we went in and we had a plan, what we were going to talk about. And I'll tell you, in probably 10 minutes of sitting with the head of purchasing for that hospital, I felt like this conversation was going off the rails. And I literally wanted to get up, grab Dick by the back of the neck. Dick's no longer with us. He passed on several years ago. I wanted to grab him by the back of his neck and drag him out in the parking lot and just beat the hell out of him and say, "What are you doing?" But he kept going and kept going. And then he made a comment, and I wish I could remember what it was. But this head of purchasing at this hospital group opened up like a Christmas present. And suddenly, an hour later, they're buying everything we had to offer. And it was because it was him being authentic and being who he was. And I learned a great lesson that day. And people have to be authentic in sales. They can't be the as you call it, sales schmuck. I'm going to start using that, sales schmucks. I love that.
And they are out there.
Yes. Oh, yes, they are. It's the old adage, used car salesman. But I will tell you that one of the very best salespeople I've ever known in my lifetime, a fellow by the name of Jim Palukas, he works for the Sewell Automotive Group. He's been a used car salesman for Sewell Automotive for 25 years. I will never buy another car from somebody else. Why? Because he is really good at his craft. So stop using the term used car salespeople. I'm going to start using sales schmuck. I
love it. And let me tell you something that's so funny. You say that about Sewell. I have bought from a gentleman, Kevin Bush at Sewell, and I have spoken about him on stages of 100 people. And you hear people, and you know how when you stand on the stage and look out and you see them and they're just like, oh my God. It's like, call Kevin Bush. Let me tell you, this man, I don't want to talk about what's under the hood or whatever. I want a white one. I want to pay this much. I want this kind of sound system. And that's what I want. He delivers it to my house. He takes away the old one. He sends the young man with the piece of paper and it has little stickies to sign here. That's how I buy a car. And Kevin understands that.
That's it. So we have to let our salespeople be authentic. So I bet you and I could swap stories all day about things like that. Sewell is a great company,
I love
by
those
the way.
stories.
That's it. Unfortunately, many of our listeners are not in the DFW area, and they've never experienced Sewell Automotive. I would encourage you to on your next car, make a trip to Dallas and buy a car
exactly. It's worth it to come to Dallas to buy a car at Sewell.
Yes, absolutely. So let's get back to kind of sales methods and tracking and that kind of thing. So is there a good method for forecasting and tracking sales?
Well, first of all, the number one thing is to do it. This is, I kid you not, how many people, this is one of the things I start with. Do you have a sales forecast? No. So how do you know? And so I find, and this is, individual people, large groups, whatever, so many people don't even have a sales forecast. So I shared with you earlier, I started my career at Texas Instruments. What do engineering people love? Numbers.
Graphs.
Graphs. Pictures, spreadsheets, those kind of things. Now, well, at Texas Instruments, they use what they called a rolling forecast. So today is January. So, most people do their forecast January through December. But if we were talking in May, the forecast would begin in May if you didn't have one, but it goes through the next 12 months. And the belief system was that if you, what happens to January, then that becomes a report that you can look back on. But the forecast is always 12 months going forward. And the way they worked was there was no way you could not do it. You had, inside sales, outside sales, you had to do this. Well, so that's how I grew up. Well, the division of TI I worked for sold to another company, and the TI management went with them. So we continued to do that. Well, later on, I changed. I went to a different company. And so this was something that we did every Monday morning. Every salesperson, you just were polite and respectful while Tom gave his report, Debbie gave hers, and all, but you knew you had to have it updated. You couldn't just copy and paste from last week. So anyway, so I go to this other company and they don't do anything, nothing. And here I am because I quit because I was mad at the manager at the other company. But there I was, a week later, hiding over at my desk, making my own sales forecast. And what I tell people about that is, today there's a lot of question about forecasting and using software and different things. And there are great ones out there. But this is an exercise that can be done with pencil and paper and a ruler. And it still can today. There is no excuse not to do a forecast. So what I did, and this is the basis for what I do, is when I start working with somebody and they do not have a forecast, I tell them, if we are going to work together, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a forecast. And they get all nervous and, we don't have, I was like, I don't care if you only have 2 pieces of business. We are going to set up the format, in a generic format, of course, would be suspect, prospect, leads, proposals, customers, very traditional. 12 months out, the next 12 months, and let's get to it. And you start filling it in. Well, what happens with that is, so thinking about the individual that I might be working with who's never had one, I send them away week 1 with this template, if you will. And we've been through exactly what to do and, how to do it. But I don't go back to the office with them and do their homework with them. So they show up the next week for the meeting and they have this. Now, I oftentimes ask people, so what are your, what would you like your sales to be this year? And, somebody says, well, I would like them to be $1 million. I don't care what the number is. That's great. But they go away and they do this forecast and they document everything they really know, including suspects. And they come back and in the bottom grand total right-hand column, it says 3 million. So I say to them, do you want to do 3 or 1? I'm good either way. And they're just like, Debbie, I had no clue. And so then we can be able to create a plan on how we can get that. Or maybe we sort out our suspects and realize they're not exactly the ones we want. We want some other ones. But now we know if we only had 10 more of these other ones that do like this, then we wouldn't need these other 40 that aren't as profitable or aren't, exactly the right criteria. And so I believe that a rolling forecast is the key to success. And I will tell you one thing that just happened last year. So I have taught this to everyone that I have worked with. I even wrote a book because of this, because I just feel like this is the key. And one of the gentlemen, he told me he had a forecast and we kind of went through this and basically what he was doing was going, yeah. Well, you're an adult, so great. You've got it. So come back next week. He sends it to me. It is the Texas Instruments deal. It is exactly what I had learned. And I looked at it, we were on a Zoom and it was like, he said, are you okay? I said, I have been doing this over 20 years. I have never had anybody that had the forecast, like I'll put, like I said, where did you learn? I did not realize he too had worked at Texas Instruments early in his career. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. So his issue wasn't his forecasting, but it was, in helping with other things about sales. But yeah, so most people just simply don't have it. So they don't know where they are. So they don't know what their target is. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they have. They don't really understand what they have and the profitability. So, they're just floundering out there and just doing this one thing alone to look at what not something you're going to have in 6 months. But what do you know today? And they realize they know a lot more than they thought they did. And so then they can have targeted activities to begin to make these things happen or let them go.
I love that. You can't manage it if you don't measure it, right? I mean,
Exactly.
that's been our old adage. And just a quick side story on how I was able to use that. I'm in the same camp. We forecast sales always, and even though I've spent most of my career sitting behind the CEO desk of the companies that I've owned and run. I started in sales, right? I started and so I developed really great habits back in those early years. And because I was always tracking sales and measuring it and monitoring it and forecasting and that, my forecasts were always good, right? I always knew. And at the point where I'd grown a company and we were taking on investors and I needed to report on what we were going to be able to accomplish in the next 3 and 6, 9, 12 months, I knew I could do that because we relentlessly track that information. I knew to a salesperson how accurate they could forecast their business. And so I could apply those metrics, just in our key accounts group in my last company, we had 3 different sales organizations. One was you might call them inside sales. They're the folks that are we called them our customer relationship folks. They're the ones who were mining existing customers for more business.
Right.
We had our new account guys, which were out there finding new, individual or up to 25 locations that they were bringing. And then we had our key account folks. And I could tell you in each one of those different groupings how accurate their forecasting was based on where we were. You coming into the quarter and I get a forecast from the key account groups. I knew how to apply a factor, and I was going to be within $100 of where they were going to end. Why? Because I measured it and tracked it and paid very close attention to those details. And it was okay for me for them to forecast the way they were, even though it was off and I was applying a different number to it, but I knew I could count on it. I could almost take that money to the bank because I knew how they forecasted and did that. But the only way I could do that was measuring it. So that is great advice. You've got to measure it. We're up on a break. We're talking with Debbie Mrazek. Let's take a quick break. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
Like it or not, eventually you'll have to come to a point when it's time for your business to transition. Will you be ready? Will you be able to get the maximum value for your business? Brought to you by Mastery Partners, Mastery Class is a 12-month program designed specifically for business owners. We meet once a month as a group to work through our Transition Readiness Assessment. Expand your business toolbox through leadership presentations, have live interaction with other business owners. This program determines vulnerabilities in your business that will affect business value and your ability to transition in the future. Whether that transition is in 2 or 15 years, what you do now has long-term effects on the future value of your business. We have the know-how you need to get the results you want in your business to maximize business value. To learn more and secure your spot in the program, visit mbvmasteryclass.com. That's mbvmasteryclass, mastery with a Y, mbvmasteryclass.com.
We're back with Debbie Mrazek, president of the Sales Company. So Debbie, I was on your LinkedIn company site, the Sales Company site, and you've got a quote on there that I'm fascinated with that I think will tie to what we were talking about before the break. You don't have to be great to get started, but you do have to get started to be great. It speaks volumes. Is that yours? Did you lift that from somebody else?
Yes, that's from, I don't even remember. It's been 30 years ago. And also there's been various variations of it, even wonderful Zig Ziglar had something like that. But, this really came about because, when you work with people and they're beating themselves up, like they've hired you to be better, and yet they're beating themselves up over what they haven't done. And it's like, you know what? We can't do anything about that. but we do have to get started if we are going to be great. So let's get started today. It's like meeting you where you're at versus, well, I'm not working with you until you do this, this, and this. Meet them where they're at, get them started and get going, because the momentum builds for them once they see, just like we were talking about before the break, at the forecast, and they see those numbers in black and white, and Debbie didn't make them up. They're theirs. And it's just like, so how do I do this? How soon can I do this? And we're off to the races.
Absolutely. So it's okay if you've been running a business for 20 years and you haven't been tracking that stuff. But if you want to be great, you have to get started. I think
right.
is what I'm hearing. So these are interesting times that we're in. I hear all kinds of things about COVID and challenges in business. Do you think genuinely that it is possible to grow in 2021?
I absolutely do. And I think if you look back at American history anyway, our business history, good times or bad times, and I'm talking about even, bad times like World War I, World War II, where yes, there were horrible things that were going on, but there were still people who were making money and had businesses. Look at the companies that are 100 years old. How many bad times had they had to go through and do this? And one of the things that I say to people is, so how many bad things have you been through in your career? Like I had 9/11 happen in my career. 85% of my business went away. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's over. But guess what? It wasn't over. We kept at it. We kept working at it, and we continue to grow. And here we are 20 plus years later with other crises going on now, and we're still doing it. So I believe in good times or bad times, you can do business. You may have to adjust. You may have to have a different offering. You may have to change expectations, maybe accept a different profit margin for a year. But I do believe that you can grow during any difficult time. And, in this day and time in 2021, more than probably ever, with the advent of all the technology that we have today, the things that people are making be businesses that before nobody would have ever thought that could be a business. So people are being creative. They have an equal footing with a big company in that they've got a technology platform they can work from to get it out to the world. Yes, I'm definitely in belief. And one of the key things with that is not giving up. And I do understand about giving up in tough times. I do. But, if you don't, reach out, other people, how can you work together? Yeah, I am 100% on board that you can grow in 2021.
Well, I'm like you. My business, I had just bought my last company, the technology company, in May of 2001. And it had been largely unprofitable. It was a very small business, less than $1 million in revenue. We had a terrible reputation in the marketplace, and our employees were like the island of misfit toys. And in 3 months, by August, we had actually turned our first profit that the company had seen in 3 years. And then, of course, 11 days later, the Twin Towers fell, 9/11. And it didn't sink into me that day, but within a couple of days, I realized our business went to zero overnight. And it would have been very easy to throw in the towel at that point and go, all right, well, this didn't work. I need to go do something else. I'm happy to report that 17 years later, I sold that company, a solid middle market company. We had done 17 additional acquisitions in those years, but it's all about getting the mindset in the right place and being able to go out and do that. So give us a magic bullet here. How can you increase sales by 10 to 20% this year?
By asking people for referrals.
Oh, okay.
This is huge. This is huge. People have wonderful clients who love them, have experienced a great service, a great product, but we do not ask them for referrals. And, why don't we? We delivered what we said we were delivering. They say they're happy, they received it. Some companies even do like a survey or a satisfaction kind of thing afterwards. And they say, oh, we love you, it was wonderful. But we don't ask them for referrals. And I'm not talking about it has to be somebody just that you did business with last month. Who have you done business with over the years? In this day and time, with the advent of LinkedIn, even if you have somebody that you have not done business with in a couple years, you can most likely find them. And I'm talking the individual, the person that gave you the purchase order, the person that did the business with you, and say to them, so who do you know that might appreciate what we do and how we do it based on your experience with us before? And they go, oh, well, my friend Mary Smith. It's like, great. Would you make an introduction? Well, again, LinkedIn makes that very easy, but you can do that. This is the number one thing when I go in and work with people. If they need something really quickly, they need a number quickly. It's like, have you asked people for referrals? No, we never do that. And just doing that, picking up one or two, and this is the other thing, when you've had success at doing something, then you're more likely to do it again. And so I think that's one of to have double-digit growth is work with, and again, this is something you already have. This is work you've already done. It's like your own intellectual property, and you're not using it to further your company. You're just letting it go. Why?
Well, I think that part of that might be just things that we get ingrained in our mind, right? Things
Yes.
that prevent us from doing things. I recall way, way early in my career, I got soured on asking people for referrals because I had a guy trying to sell me something, and he was not successful, and we wound up buying from somebody else. And he immediately asked me for referrals, and I thought, why in the hell would I refer you to somebody if I didn't buy your product in the first place? And that instantly triggered in my mind, don't ask for referrals because asking for referrals is bad. But that's not true, right?
Right.
You're talking about going out to the folks who know you, already like you, do business with you, and asking them in a genuine and polite way, because people want to help the people that they work with, right?
Absolutely. And they do want to help you. They don't want to feed you. They want to help you, but we don't ask.
Yeah. That's a shame. There's your magic bullet, folks. You want to increase your sales 10 to 20% this year. You heard it here first from Debbie Mrazek, but you heard it on the Maximize Business Value podcast. So we hear that also talks a lot about networking, right? And people talk about networking. Are there good places to network to grow sales? I know you're a great networker like I am, but are there places that people should go network to grow their sales?
Absolutely. So you started the podcast by sharing with them how we knew each other through Business Pros. So Business Pros is an organization of professionals where we all do different things, and we work together to learn new things, to help one another, to do referrals. This is a great form of networking, and I think everyone should have a group like this. But what industry do you serve? You should be going to their events. That's where your customers are. They are the ones that are going to buy from you. And yet what I find is most people do not go network there. And I use the example of myself. This is years ago. Abbott Laboratories here in Irving, Texas was my client. And one of our buyers was on the board for it was called the National Association of Purchasing Managers at that time. And I did a lot of business in California. And he said, we're having our conference out there. Why don't you come be with us? And I did. I bought my own ticket and I went. And what I was really looking for is, because I lived in Texas, I lived in Dallas, but I did business all over the place. And I thought, I probably really do need to learn better what purchasing managers in other areas, what are they looking at? What's important to them? Those kinds of things. Well, while I was there, he ran into me in the hall and he said, "Hey girl," he said, "I just thought about, we're doing a panel this afternoon, like how purchasing managers can work with vendors and stuff. Would you be on that panel?" And I said, "Absolutely." Well, for years, I went to that conference, and let me assure you, I was the only salesperson at that conference, and I met buyers from all over. And that's where I got the idea about going then. So now you will see me like at cybersecurity conferences, or, I had a client that was doing retail, like retail conferences, those kind of things, and looking at what are they saying. And I am intentional when I'm there about talking to other people. Like, you're not my customer, so tell me, how do you buy? What annoys you about salespeople in your business? What do you wish they did differently? I also, like, every year I speak at a conference called Project Management International. And these are project managers, but they work at these corporations. And the way the world works today, many departments have to work with salespeople. So what are you seeing? What do they do? What makes you crazy? What do you love or like, even, kind of thing. So I think we should network outside of what is our normal circle. I think we should definitely network there, but we should go where our customers are.
Brilliant. I love that. I do a lot of work in the technology space as well. I was a known quantity. I owned a company in the space, got very involved in the trade association. I actually write articles for their magazine. I post information on their website. But that is a great place to network. And by the way, when people are looking for the services that we provide, and they're a part of that organization, who do you think gets their business?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, and I've had people, like, just like I mentioned, the one, where they asked me at that panel, but since then I have been intentional when I go to like their trade association thing. Now I'm talking about months and months before the conference actually happens, but call the person who's in charge of programming for that conference and saying, "What, do you do breakout sessions this year? Is there any place, I could do," like the Project Management International, the very first time I spoke for them, they asked me to speak on negotiating. I said, "Are you kidding?" They said, "Well, can't you do it?" I went, "Yes, I can do it." And so they talked to me about what these project managers were having to negotiate. And they thought a salesperson would be great to teach them. My session was 4:00 on Friday afternoon, packed.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, so there I was in front of all these different companies, with people that affect who they're going to buy from in the procurement department.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I'll be willing to bet when you did that, over the years, you probably could measure the amount of business that you got as a result of that.
Absolutely can.
That's
and I am
brilliant.
grateful every time.
That's brilliant. So, before we kind of get into our wrap up questions here, who in the company should be doing sales?
Oh, that is such a great question. So when it's a small company and it's maybe the owner, the owner thinks, that they're not the salesperson. But the truth is, there's nobody that cares about the product, the service, the initiative, no one more than the owner. Nobody can talk. They eat, sleep, and drink it. So they are, whether they like it or not, they are the best people to sell it. One of the things in small companies, what I see is people hiring, their brother-in-law, their cousin, somebody that says they do sales. And not that that person maybe couldn't sell something, but they don't have the same interest. You're just trying to push it off. You said you could do sales, you do it. And then they lose it. Kind of thing. So they are. And in other companies, one of the things that I say is we are all in sales. So, for example, if you have, just thinking of a technology company, you have an engineering department. Your engineers, this is one of the things I say, they collect a paycheck on the 1st and the 15th. Everybody does, if you're working in a bigger company. And so how do you get that money into your company? Well, if you don't sell anything, you don't have any money coming in. So everybody is in sales. So what can the engineers do to help their own salespeople be able to be better? And I use the example of Siemens Corporation. This happened many years ago. The CEO was crazed over, their place in the market on a particular division. And the engineering department, not the sales department, the engineering department director hired me to come work with the engineers to teach them how they could work better with the salespeople, because they had the technology, the salespeople had the sales skills, and a rising tide lifts all boats. So I worked with the engineering department, and this was even some things that are so simple, like you need to have a clean tie. You need to have socks that match. The guy who was the head of it, he said, Debbie, engineers, and really, we have to do those basic things. And he said, I just don't feel like I can stand in front of them and talk about socks. And he said, I think you can. I said, I can. So, but what happened was, we did not tell the sales department that the head of the sales department knew, but none of the salespeople. So the engineering departments work with us, and then we send them out. Well, the first time one of them is at the airport, dressed, ready to go, meeting him in Chicago where they're supposed to be, and the salesman gets off the plane because he's already been complaining about the guy, and gets off the plane and sees him, and the guy's like, great, here's what I have, based on what you told me we were going to talk about, we're going to have this. He looks like $1 million, and the salesperson's going, well, okay, we've got a rent car at Hertz, and they go. Well, this went on for like 2 weeks because these people had to travel. Their engineering group was in one city, but they traveled. And so the sales head invited the vice president head to come sit in on the meeting. And evidently he did that from time to time. And so while he was there, the sales guy started, running the meeting as normal. How was your week? What happened? And this guy goes, you know what? I was in Chicago, and Ralph was waiting for me at the airport, and his clothes looked nice, and he had the dossier all, already typed and had a copy for me. And, it was just like, I don't know what, Ralph had an awakening. Well, then somebody else at the table goes, well, Mildred met me, and it was just all of this. And so then the sales guys started messing with him and going, anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody else? And then he just stood back and looked at him and said, y'all have been had. Said the engineering department went out and hired a sales coach to figure out how to work with you. The only way we're going to make this number the CEO wants us to make this year is if we work together. So I believe everybody is in sales, whether customer service. I was doing some work recently with a group that for the state of Texas, they have long-term assistance facilities. These are management kind of people. And of course, there's sales involved with that. You have to have people in your beds, kind of thing. And I was sharing with them, even the people who are, the nurses, the staff, they know people in their community that are going to need long-term care. They need to be talking about it. Everyone can be part of this.
I love that. That's one of my mantras, that everybody is in sales. As I frequently say, nothing happens in any of my businesses, in any business, until somebody sells something.
Yes.
That's when the work begins. And I used to have a saying for folks that would throw up roadblocks to growth and selling. I would call them the director of sales prevention. And they knew exactly what I was talking about.
Yes.
Let's knock down all the barriers. Everybody is in sales. So what sets the sales company apart from other sales consultants? Why would our audience want to engage with you, Debbie?
A couple of reasons. One, I think, is the actual experience that I had actually doing sales. Not that, I'm still selling today. I have to sell consulting services. Selling yourself was the hardest thing I ever had to learn. But, that I actually have that experience. And like I said earlier, both from customer service, inside sales, outside sales. But today, like I said, 20 plus years later, working with all these companies, working in all different industries. And you mentioned, I work with the Goldman Sachs program. I have worked with over 500 companies in the last 6 years. Now, these are, small, less than 20 million, 25 million size companies, but still 500 different companies that are all from different things. So I think the expertise and the experience that I bring to it because of what I've done personally doing sales, but then also continuing on with all these people, all these years that, I have learned volumes that I'm able to, even though something I might suggest to you was something I learned in a completely different industry, but you would have never thought about it, and you try it and it works, so it's like, we have lots of arrows in our quiver.
I love that. I love that. So, and by the way, you brought up again the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses. It is a spectacular program. I have been a guest speaker frequently for them, and it is worth small businesses investigating and getting the kind of help there that you can get. That's wonderful that you're a part of that
Thank
program.
you.
So, one last business question. This podcast is all about maximizing business value. What's the one most important thing you recommend business owners do to build value in their business?
So, in sales specifically, many people have heard the ABCs of sales is to always be closing. That's the ABCs of sales. What I really believe the ABCs of sales is to always be caring. So if you own a business and you genuinely, I'm talking about genuinely, care about what you do, what you're producing, it's quality, it's the best, you care about your people and you care about your customers, I think that is the greatest value you can bring that will pay you dividends year in, year out for however long you want to do it.
Awesome. That is solid advice. And I will add to that if you do that and you are able to successfully leverage that and grow your business, a growing business is always more valuable than a business that is flat or declining. Hands down, that's one of the biggest things that buyers look for in a business, and it will improve the value. And that starts with caring. I love that. Always be caring. We're going to have a sales competition. Second place is steak knives, right? I can hear Alec Baldwin right now saying,
yes, exactly. Oh my gosh.
What a great movie, Glengarry Glen Ross.
Yes, and it's been my example for years because it is it. It's it. Yes.
That it's one of my favorite movies of all time. So now, however, I can't let you off the hook. Everybody who listens to our podcast regularly knows that I always ask a bonus question, and they stay tuned all the way to this point because they want to know the answer to this, Debbie. And so, what personality trait has gotten you into the most trouble over the years?
Oh, this is a fun one. Trust. When I started, I did not really understand that you couldn't trust people. I was naive. I didn't know. I hadn't been around people that didn't tell the truth, or so I thought. And so I was so trusting. And yet, once I figured that out, how, people can be, it's actually both. It's the thing that's caused me the most heartache, but it's also the thing that trusting has probably made me the most money.
Oh, I like
so
that.
It's been a double-edged sword, understanding how it works.
Yes, believe me, I know. I am like you, a very trusting person. I trust everybody until they give me a reason not to. And then earning that trust back is, you might as well try to boil the ocean.
Absolutely. When I was early on in my career, I don't know if you remember the company Compact Computer, and
Yes.
these guys had started at Texas Instruments and they started this company. And so I was providing them with like samples of semiconductors and things. And I tell you, I stood up every week in my sales meeting and told my boss, I know they are going to do this. I trust them. This is who works there. This is what they do it all. And he was just like, if you don't, I'm going to fire you, kind of thing, And let me tell you, it took, several months before it all came together. But it was probably my most powerful lesson. Like, I knew these people. I trusted them. They were giving me information that I did trust, even though it didn't make sense to my boss. But it was like I stuck to my guns, and he's gone now, but he always told the story better than me in the end. Yeah.
That's fun. That's great. So how can our viewers and listeners get in touch with you, Debbie?
The best way, just go to LinkedIn, Debbie Mrazek, Mrazek, or go to my website, the-sales-company.com.
Thank you. Thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you and your listeners. I'm delighted to have been with you.
What a fun time. So you can find Debbie at the-sales-company.com or on LinkedIn. And of course, you can always reach out to me and I will be happy to make a warm introduction to my good friend, Debbie Mrazek. This is the Maximize Business Value podcast, where we give practical advice to business owners on how to build long-term sustainable value in your business. Be sure to tune in each week and follow us wherever you found this podcast. And be sure to comment. We love comments, and I promise we respond to all of them. So until next time, I'm Tom Bronson, reminding you to develop a great growth strategy while you maximize business value.
Thank you for tuning into the Maximize Business Value podcast with Tom Bronson. This podcast is brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners to maximize business value so they can transition on their terms. Learn more on how to build long-term sustainable business value and get free value-building tools by visiting our website, www.masterypartners.com. That's master with a Y, masterypartners.com. Check it out.
That was perfect. I wouldn't make any changes on that.